Okay. So I guess we're live.
Yep.
Hopefully. All right, Windows Phone Central Podcast 167 for March 20th, 2014. Hey everybody, Dan Rubino here, joined once again by Jay Bennett and Sam Savory for another exciting podcast. I say exciting, and it's rage-filled today.
We should clarify, it's rage-filled by you, Dan, as always. You are providing the rage to my cheeriness and Sam's zen. We're like yin, yang, and whatever the other one would be.
Yeah, that's only because I need to set up and use Google Hangouts, which people always like, why do you use Google Hangouts? It's not like we love it, but it's just like, in theory, it's a better system. In reality, it actually is absolutely terrible to use, and so it's just a huge process every time. Google's fond of changing everything all the time and basically just doing it. It's like a perpetual beta. So anyways, but that's my 2-second rant. So how you guys doing?
So you realize that you've ranted at the beginning of every single podcast since we've gone on to Google+.
Pretty much. They're terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Today's fun was, of course, that Dan was struggling to, we found out that we have some infractions, apparently, and we have to sort out some copyright concerns that Google decided to throw away. Otherwise I'm good. It's been about a month since our last one, at least, or at least no more than that, actually. So we've gone through February. There's an awful lot of news to get through today, but we're going to sort of try and, rather than go back over the entire 3 months of news, it's been 2 months of news. We're going to go through the big top stories and stuff we want to talk about, really, and then a couple about fun apps for this week. Sam, how are you doing?
Doing excellent.
Excellent.
Stoked to get this going.
Yeah, I've managed to see Sam exactly once on Titanfall in the time since it's been out, even though he claimed he'd be playing it loads. So
I am playing loads.
Well, you're never around when I'm on, you crazy time difference person. And Dan, I think I've seen you sign into your Xbox One once or twice.
I'm usually on at night, but yeah, I use it for watching Netflix and Hulu. That's pretty much it.
That's a good thing.
I do have like 2 Lego games, and I did finally buy Titanfall, but I haven't even put it into my thing yet. So.
But it's brilliant. Okay, well, I'll move on from that before I get too crazy about the fact that you've not got it. And maybe we'll all go and play a game after the podcast.
I did just move, and so
that is a fair point. Yeah, we should clarify. We were going to do another podcast last week, but Dan has moved. Flat. What do you call it over there? Apartment, yeah.
Apartment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Apartment, yeah. So Dan has moved apartment, and as a result, is now in somewhere different in America because I've already forgotten where it was called.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, which is a real place.
It's where the revolution started. We're going to where we kicked your asses out of. Yeah. America.
No, we left. we left when we realised what you'd done. It's just like, it's too late. But okay, carry on. So, news this week. I say the news this week. The news from the last month and a bit. First of all, we're going to talk about Windows Phone 8.1. Build is 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away. Is that right? 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks away, yeah. And of course, we're expecting the big news about the Windows Phone 8.1 and a developer preview amongst, well, all sorts of other crazy stuff that they're going to bring out. So let's talk about these leaks. Dan and Sam, you've been sort of more engaged with the leaks than I have, primarily because I'm ticked off with Microsoft for telling me that I was going to be on the preview program and then never sending me the information. It's like,
they probably figured out who you were.
Right.
I had to link to a thing, and the day that they sent me that, it was like, top story on our thing posted on the front was, hey, look at all the leaks from Windows Phone 8.1 SDK. I was like, oh, well, there goes my preview. There goes my preview. So let's talk about the features that we've established from the SDK, and we'll then go into a little bit later on about Cortana and other stuff that's leaked since. So, Dan, have you got the story up? Do you want to talk us through some of them, or Sam, somebody?
Yeah, early February 10th, Microsoft sent out a private beta preview of the 8.1 SDK to a select number of developers, and right after that, it ended up on the internet. Information was coming out onto Reddit, into Twitter, and onto our website.
It leaked so quickly. I mean, it's amazing that they didn't have some kind of watermark in there to establish what people were leaking or who was leaking, or just have some kind of concept.
I kind of think they were. I know a little bit of what kind of happened and what they were trying to do. Apparently, it leaked so early that there's a couple processes. If you got the invite, you had to click a link and accept it, and then once you were accepted, it wasn't like an automatic thing. It had to go into a system, and then once you were approved after your acceptance, you were then sent a download link. by the time you actually completed all of that, it was actually like a little bit of a process, and it leaked so early that, from what I understand, it was only like 10 or 20 people had actually downloaded it at that point. But yeah, it happened too quickly almost, and too thoroughly, because then once it happened, and then it got out. I mean, I think we had it within 24 hours, the actual SDK, because it just started traveling on back channels, and so we've all just had it since then. I kind of feel bad for Microsoft at this point. I mean, they knew it was going to kind of happen, but at the same time, like, I really didn't want stuff to leak out. I was kind of hoping.
Yeah, the problem is that when it leaks, they don't get to control the message, and it means that we just won't get these previews in the future. So if you look at everything that happened with Windows Phone 8, there was no preview. Now, granted, there couldn't really be much of a preview because it was new hardware, etc. But it's kind of like, if it's going to leak that quickly and that easily, then what's the point in giving the developers early access when how much they really need it? It was supposed to be developers who they trusted were supposed to be getting this.
They give it early because for two reasons. One was to get feedback on it. It's actually beta, so that developers can go, hey, I'm going to start using this and putting stuff together. But some of the documentation isn't complete. I mean, because people complain just as much if Microsoft had just kept it all a secret and went, here's 8.1 on April 2nd. By the way, the SDK will be out in like a couple of days. Some people developers get upset sometimes when we don't give them the stuff early on, because then they're like, oh, now we got to react to making this apps and getting everything out there. But Microsoft's been adjusting things as they go along. I'm sure they took lessons from this, so that whatever happens next, for 8.2 or 8.5, whatever they're going to call the next major update, they'll do things differently. I don't know what that actually will entail, but I can guarantee they're probably not going to do the same process, or they'll put other restrictions. So but yeah, it stinks for Microsoft only because they can't control the message. Things come out piecemeal. Things come out partially untrue. There's a lot of inferences made. For instance, there's this idea that you can change the messaging app, the default app. So that got out there. A lot of people are like, oh, that's awesome. You'll be able to pick an app as your default messenger. Not entirely true. As it turns out, it looks like it's only carriers who get that option.
Okay. Well, that makes some sense.
It actually does make sense when you think about it. It almost would have been weird if you left everybody else the opportunity to, make their default messenger. So there's like all that nuance stuff really changes how people, perceive 8.1, and so that's why leaks are bad. I mean, I know we all want to know, but at the same time, it's sort of stupid too, because it's like we all want to know. We all also could have waited 6 weeks, because that's how far out it was. And so I think people are just getting a little ridiculous with this stuff. But once it starts, it's a competition thing, right? Everyone wants to outdo each other. It wasn't enough to have the SDK leak, so I had to go and show the videos of it and working too. So,
and then, I mean, don't these developers also maybe develop some apps to highlight the Windows Phone 8.1 features for build? Is that a possibility?
Yeah. I'm not sure on that. I mean, I suppose if you're a developer going to build and you want to be able to talk about those things a little bit, maybe talk about sort of being, I suppose they gain evangelists in that front. So they will get people that are saying, oh yeah, this is really cool. Let's go to build. Let's get this sorted out. Yeah, that's a possibility. I can't really say much more than that. It's certainly a possibility. Let's actually talk about what we do know. So I'm going to quickly run down some of the features that we've got talked about, and then if one of you guys wants to jump in and say, oh, I'm really excited for that, then please go ahead. And chat room, as we've been saying, please let us know your favorite features, the features that you're looking forward to the most. If you're not in the chat room and some reason watching this through YouTube, please go to WPCentral.com, where you'll find the chat room that we normally use for this. Log in with your Twitter, Facebook, or whatever account, and come and join the conversation. So Action Center, which is Notification Center, apps and store changes, which include things like suggestions by locations, backup of app and game data to OneDrive if enabled, which is great news for some developers, Update store apps automatically, an option to do that only over Wi-Fi, just to pick out a couple more. Big calendar updates, including the Google Calendar support finally coming back. Burst camera mode, which we'll come back to a little bit later on when we start talking about what is the new.
Are you really going to read all of these?
No, I'm going to pick out a couple, so don't get too worried. Big browser updates. There's a couple of other things such as moving from XAP to the Apex command packaging type even. And the other major one that we think we want to talk about is the swipe keyboard, and we'll say Bluetooth 4 LE and Cortana. And we'll come back to Cortana in a minute. Let's just talk about the swipe keyboard for a second, because people have often said, oh, we need to have swipe. I think the key thing is this isn't swipe with a Y. This isn't like they're going to bring about the actual. I don't believe they've licensed it from swipe, but I might be wrong there.
I think this is their own implementation.
Yeah.
There is no. It's not swipe with a capital S. It's also not the ability to open up to third parties or keyboards. This is simply another way of using the keyboard in which instead of just physically typing, you can drag your finger, and it's their own sliding swipe invention, basically. It's their you just think of it as sort of their text prediction technology. It's just an extension of that, just another way to actually do something. It'll make some people happy. I don't think it'll make others. It's not what I think a lot of people want, that third-party stuff, but that's not happening. This isn't that. So having said that, I think it's still kind of cool because it could be an interesting way for input, which I'm not a big fan of actually still typing on screens. So.
Yeah, and so I'm quite curious to see if it improves one-handed support, because I think that's the thing a lot of us don't get, especially if you're using a big old phone like this and you want to be able to get around with your thumb. Your thumb is a bit of a pain to try and do that. If I can go quicker with just one thumb by swiping through my keys, then that's my benefit realized straight away. Sam, where do you stand on swipe keyboards?
I think it'll be nice to have the option. In the past, on Android, I wasn't too big a fan of them. I know a lot of people like them, so I think it'll be good just to have the option there. But people will probably still complain that you can't have third-party keyboards, and at least Microsoft is giving an option for another input method, which is always a good thing. Options are always good.
Yeah, absolutely right. The other one I wanted to pick out was the backup of app and game data to OneDrive. This just makes sense. I mean, there was already this sort of capability in Windows 8 now that developers, we can basically use something called the roaming settings, and that automatically syncs everything along. It's more of a big deal for people like us who switch between phones because we're drug dealers or whatever you want to call it. And B, people who, like me, have lost game saves in the past where things haven't backed up correctly. And so potentially, and I'm not going to jinx anything here because it's got to be developer enabled, but we might finally see some kind of cloud-based save games. And considering, I think, Dan, have we been shouting for that since the first podcast we ever did?
Sure. I can actually say with 8.1, the whole concept of backing up has been greatly improved, and not just in apps and games, but also in your device setup. Right now, when you get a new Windows phone and you log in with your account, it's been improving the experience. Like now you can do it over Wi-Fi right away, which is a big change. It's really nice. And then it usually will ask you, what do you want to install from? Meaning, if you use the backup feature now, you can pick your previous phone, and I have like 8. It's pretty crazy, and I just go through and I pick whichever one I've been using the latest, and I tap that, and then what it's going to do is it brings in like accent color changes and even some sound settings, and then it downloads all my apps. And while that's really useful, it's also not exactly how, like, say, Windows 8.1 works, which is it pulls in your apps but doesn't download them. It allows you to go through and tap and download one by one and actually approve, which is good because you don't necessarily want to mirror or download everything again at once. The other thing is, once you do download stuff, you still have to go set up your start screen right now, which is really annoying and time-consuming. But all that is going to change with Windows Phone 8.1, where it's going to behave a lot more like the desktop OS now, where when you restore something, it just puts everything back the way it was and installs everything that you want it to, and it mirrors the device. So combine that with the app and game backups, there's going to be a lot of potential here for just having stuff saved, and it'll make switching devices much easier.
Right.
Yeah. And
same theme color, same start screen layout. It'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing, because of course we get the app restored now, or apps list restored now, but not the start screen layout, that sort of thing. Sorting out the theme colors. It's what they promised when they first came out with Windows Phone 7. It was you turn on your phone, it would be instantly personalized, instantly your phone. Balmer, I remember him standing up and saying, "This is what we're promising you. This is my start screen." Making sure that can continue to move with you as you move through devices is a big deal for people like us, certainly. Let's talk about. It's great. Let's talk about Cortana, because let's be honest, in a lot of ways, this could be one of the most interesting features that they're coming up with. Now, the rumors have sort of run awry, and things have gone all over the place because. That's the way of putting this. I think some people are expecting Cortana to be the answer to everything, life, the universe, and to be able to do their dishes, laundry, and everything else for them. Let's play devil's advocate for now, and let's talk about what we actually really think or know Cortana can do.
Well, here, I'll tell you one thing. It's going to be beta probably when it's actually announced.
Yeah.
Meaning it's still not complete. It's still an early thing. Cortana will be more interesting a year from now than it will be when it comes out. Not saying it won't be nice when we do have it. I think it will be. I don't think it'll be as powerful as Google's solution with their Google Now, which is really impressive. I don't think it'll be as good as the Moto X, which can be in standby. The phone can basically be off, and you can talk to it, and it'll come up and awake. I don't think it's going to have that stuff. I think it will get that stuff. And because it's beta, it's not going to be totally perfect, but this is the beginning of something. This is a big piece of technology that Microsoft is working on. It's going to be eventually put out into Windows 8, Xbox, and all their other services to really tie things together. So it has the potential to be huge. And like I said, I think the story will be bigger in a year from now than when it first comes out. I think when it first comes out, people will be like, "Oh, this is nice," but it's not, game-changing at all. And I'm still not convinced necessarily that even the voice stuff, like the Moto X, I would say has probably the best voice service available on any technology today. It's really impressive. It's so impressive, though, that I never use it. I'm just not there yet with talking to my phone and asking it to do things. I understand some people are like, they use it to set appointments.
Yeah.
And there's going to vary, but as soon as you go out into the public, and outside, you stop talking to your phone. No one does this, right? It's only when you're alone in your own place.
Well, I think you can do it as long as you've got like a weird coat, sort of scraggy beard, and then sort of got a bit of a twitch, and sort of like, do something.
Yeah. and like the commands are weird. It's like I think it's like okay Google now, and like it comes up. I don't know. It's not natural. But that's always the problem with this voice stuff. Having said that, I think voice is the future. I mean, it's going to get good, but it's
it's got to be really natural, and natural language isn't there yet.
And like you said, with Cortana, you're not going to be talking. I like you won't be talking to it as much. I think it'll be more interesting to have it talk back to you when it gives you suggestions, more like Google Now. That'll be more useful.
Yeah, I agree there. So, I mean, that's the other half of Cortana. It's not just like something you talk to, but it's going to be smart and sort of look at your device and your email and everything. Now, what's kind of cool about that, too, is there's a notebook feature, and that's where you put in information that is siloed that Microsoft doesn't have, but the system can access, but you can go through and control that and give it and tell it, no, don't have that in there, do have that in there. And that's different from Google, who just sucks up everything you tell it, which is a security and privacy concern for some. But this thing will supposedly go through, look at your calendar appointments, track packages for you, and do a lot of smart stuff and give you those updates. And that's really kind of what, for me, when we talk about smartphones, that's what we're talking about. Smartphones have sort of become this generic term for basically a portable computer that's also can make phone calls, but that's not really like conceptually what I've always imagined. Years ago on Windows Mobile, we had an app called Phone Alarm. I mean, this was going back to 2006, and there you could like put in cell towers and Wi-Fi hotspots, and it would basically whenever you came into those networks, it would automatically change your profile. So a real world example would be you would walk into your home and your profile would set the ringer to on, to vibrate, to dim the screen and all this. Meanwhile, if you went to work, you could set it automatically to vibrate. And this was all done automatically behind the scenes. That was in 2006. Where is that stuff today in smartphones?
Yeah, Google now is starting to try and make those kind of ideas, sort of location, the geofenced stuff, as you were calling it. That's what we're looking at here. But
yeah, that's part of 8.1. Geofencing is part of 8.1. So there's going to be that feature developers can use, which would be really cool.
So I've just asked the chat room, what do you want Cortana to do for you? And once again, if you're listening to us on YouTube or anything else, please go to our website, WPCentral.com, where you can join in with the chat room and get involved in the podcast. But basically, I've got a few good, interesting ones here. Deshane Smith has the same sort of concept as you, what you're talking about, Dan, with Moto X, saying he'd like to have active listening, so be able to talk to it whilst it's in standby. We think we all agree that would be pretty cool, although you've got to have battery life concerns there, amongst other areas as well. People have said Siri-like commands with Google Now-like data. That's from Devma11. Yeah, agreed. Siri is good for the natural language. Google Now has been extremely good with how it handles the data in the location areas. Cruise Zero says, I think people have too high a hope with Cortana right now. Basically, what Dan said was something similar to Moto X, with a little more natural interaction. And a lot of people, again, agreeing with you on geolocation. And I think one of the most interesting points I'm going to bring up here is from RPitmitter L007. Thank you for joining us. We want Cortana released worldwide, even in beta or whatever. That's an interesting point. Have we heard anything about, whether or not this is going to be an American-only deal, or whether or not this is going to come worldwide?
I honestly don't know. I haven't been. It's not something we've been privy to. I'm not really too sure what their plans are. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be worked out of. I mean, for instance, like everybody wants Jen Taylor to voice it, which sounds good. I mean, why not, right? Well, because it's generating speech, and you can't have Jen Taylor record every utterance in the English language.
You can to some degree. That is partially possible. That you can synthesize voices with a lot of recordings. That's pretty much what they did with Siri.
Kind of, and while I'm telling you right now, at least in the beta version, there's a distinction. There's the Cortana's voice, what you can hear, and then it'll switch sometimes to a sort of like what's on Tell Me.
So yeah, Microsoft Sam, not our Sam, Microsoft Sam.
Right. So it's sort of a hybrid. I heard it could be a little bit jarring when you do use it. So but once again, that may be something that changes over time.
Are they going to do that for your name? So will it say, "Good morning, Chief"? Yeah,
it could be. Yeah. So I don't know. I do agree. I think people are right. I think we're building up Cortana to be too much. I think we're a little bit crestfallen over it. But it's sort of like when people were like disappointed that the Nokia Lumia 1820 wasn't announced at Mobile World Congress. It's like, well, that was never supposed to exist.
It's built up in your minds.
Yeah. So that's what's happening here.
So 5Ham0 agrees. He says, dig deeper into yourselves. Cortana is a cool feature, but you won't be using it. You don't care. You don't care might be a little bit extreme, but yeah, it's the sort of thing where you'll enjoy the feature, and it's you want these kind of headline-grabbing features. It's important. It's a buzz factor, as Cruise Zero has just said. But it's cool. It needs to grab people's attention, and if it's got the name Cortana on it, it might just be enough to bring in a few new people. I want to go back to what RPitmitter said as well about worldwide release. I'm concerned about this, considering the fact that the Xbox hasn't been released in various regions, kind of because of the same sort of reason. The voice commands weren't available for Kinect. So it will be interesting to see that. We'll have to keep our ears to the ground on that one.
Yeah, but that's also a pretty big issue because it's not as easy as snapping your finger and having a product localized for a specific market, and that's what Microsoft wants to do. At least with the Kinect, they're saying is they don't want to just deliver a subpar experience, and I think that's kind of played into the delays and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely right. So let's just talk about one thing that we know Cortana will do, which is quite cool. There's an option in the screenshots we've seen for track flights or other things mentioned in your email. I'm curious about this because presumably, as it comes through, it's going to try and identify roughly what the email is about and then talk to you about it, or is it going to try and make the notifications for you?
So it'll scan your emails and texts and kind of get an idea of your schedule. So let's say you text me, Sam, let's go get dinner tomorrow night, tacos at Trader Joe's, wherever, tomorrow, 2 p.m. In the text message, Cortana you'll be able to, within the text message, it'll be an actionable item where you can just say, yes, Cortana, add that to my calendar. Cortana will be able to tell this is something that needs it's in action. Okay. And so that applies to that concept goes to your email and wherever else throughout the OS.
That could be some pretty interesting language parsing if it's able to deal with that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Of course, it won't be able to come over the problem, Sam, that I'll never send you those text messages because we've got the Atlantic in the way between the two.
Yeah, it'd be a long flight for dinner.
It'd be a long flight. But, one of these days you'll make it and we'll get something over in London.
The bigger story with 8.1, it's like what you said. I mean, things like Cortana and the Action Center will get a lot of the headlines because they're easy to just say. But really, 8.1 is a significant overhaul of the whole OS. And there's just so many subtle, small changes that are going to really improve usability. Whether it's the camera being reworked or even in the People Hub where they actually shrunk down the people name to show you more information and reworking some of the UI. All those things are actually going to matter to most users every day as opposed to some of these big features which you may or may not use. So I think that's almost the biggest thing here. That's why 8.1 is so impressive so far, is that these aren't just a few features, but they really went through the whole OS and looked at every single little thing and look to improve upon it. Look at the Wi-Fi options now where you can have it turn off after a certain amount of hours and back on again. Geofencing. All the developer additions, the opening up of the OS for developers to access things. All of this is going to really make a big difference, I think, for a lot of people, and it'll be lost sort of in the message out there that the media is going to, pick up on, because it's nuanced, and people don't like nuance.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I'd say a big overhaul, but not in the same way that Windows Phone 8 was. We're looking at a big feature overhaul here. We're looking at, the same sort of level as Mango was. I think we were all expecting that kind of release. And realistically, it's called 8.1 to match up with Windows 8.1, but realistically, this could have been 8.5. This is just, the numbering is the numbering. So, yeah, you'll find out more at Build. There's plenty more stuff to go on, and please go to the website if you want to check out some more of the features that are along. Obviously, there's far too much for us to go through here in a podcast. I do want us to pick up a little bit because we've had a fairly significant phone launch between now and then, and that is the Lumia Icon. And Dan, I know that you actually were recently talking about the fact that you thought the Icon was so nicely styled that it kind of looks like a Surface phone. I thought it might be interesting to sort of explore that. So talk about the Icon. How are you finding it? Is it your go-to device now?
It almost is my go-to device. I mean, it's a Verizon device, but I also have my AT&T phone, so I actually like to carry both around. Having said that, I do use it very frequently. I like it a lot. I think it's sort of the perfect size. While I love the 1520, especially when using it, it is a little bit cumbersome to carry around and all this. Where sometimes you want to be a little bit more discreet. And I think I've said it in the review that for most regular people, the Icon is the perfect phone because it's basically the same size as the 928, but you have actually a bigger screen with way more specs in it. And it's been really good. It doesn't have some of the bugs that the 1520 had, which is like the touch sensitivity and the auto brightness issue. The Icon doesn't suffer from those, but then again, you don't get the glance screen, which is actually really, really annoying. Other than that, though,
there's no glance screen on the Icon.
No.
Nope.
No.
Why on earth not?
They say it's a technology limitation. Basically, I mean, I don't know it's for a fact, but if you look at how glance works, they have glance on AMOLED screens like the 928, and they have glance on 1080p screens like the Lumia 1520. What this is, though, would be glance on an AMOLED 1080p screen. And that's the only thing I can think of. They haven't been able to do that for whatever reason, whether it's a battery issue, whether it's a pixel issue. I don't really know.
It's AMOLED, right? This device, the Icon.
Yeah,
that's crazy because that's exactly why you'd want the kind of phone that you'd want that on. I mean, how it works on this LCD screen that the 920 has, then why the heck can't it work elsewhere?
Right.
I know, that is strange. So let's just swiftly go through some of the specs of the phone that we're talking about here. It's Windows Phone 8 Update 3, Lumia Black firmware. Dan talked about there, the 5-inch Full HD 1080p OLED display. The usual stuff that you get from Nokia, from the clear back and the Summit readability. 2 gig of RAM and 32 gig of internal storage. I'm trying to work out the purpose of the 2 gig of RAM because the last time we saw that it was because of the big 41 megapixel camera. Talk about the camera in this one. I'm looking at a 20 megapixel dual LED flash. Again, no Carl Zeiss, which is a bit disappointing.
Oh no, it's Carl Zeiss. It's PureView. Sure.
Dual LED flash, according to that. Sorry, not Carl Zeiss. I'm not saying Carl. Sorry, I meant to say not what is it with flash? I don't know why I just said the word Carl's
You want to say Xenon.
That's the word I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Xenon flash was in the 928, not in this one. You know, that's a big deal for some people. The Xenon flash is nice. I wouldn't say, I mean, depends how you use your flash, though. No, it wasn't a game changer for me to have that on there, but it would have been nice to have it. But you can tell the focus on the icon, is a little bit different than the Lumia 928. The Lumia 928, its focus was the Xenon flash and the speaker, the rear speaker on it, which was a lot bigger. It was supposed to be really good for conference calls. They kind of refocused that on the icon, where the camera is still super impressive, but it's more about the whole experience, the display, the actual quality of the camera, and that kind of thing. So they backed off some things, and the speaker now is a lot smaller than it was previously. But
yeah,
no, they
I get really disappointed. I get really disappointed when they put dual LED flashes on these things, though, because I know like the Xenons generally do take a better photo. The light is better. Usually the spread is better, and it means that you do get what they called freezing motion, which is accurate.
Right.
You need that kind of amount of light to be able to capture a picture of moving subject, in low light. And it's, I don't know, it's a bit of a shame that we've gone back to the dual LED, because I thought we were on for a bit of a revolution at one moment, but c'est la vie. Sam, have you got one of these icons?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Would love one though. They're pretty sweet. Like Dan said, perfect size. 1520 is a great phone. Display's beautiful. But day to day, for me, I think it might just be a little too unwieldy, a little too big, a little too awkward just to pull out. Is that a Lumia in your pants, or are you just happy to see me, sort of thing? You know, you're gonna have to get some big pockets, and I don't know. The icon is just the right size, not too big, not too small. I mean, it is big, but it's the good big, you know.
So bringing us back to Windows Phone 8.1 then, is this the kind of device we want to see Windows Phone 8.1 on? Is there anything we'd change about it for that?
Well, yeah, I think what's going to happen is whatever the Lumia 930 is, whatever that comes to be, I think is going to be like an icon-level device. Yeah, I mean, Nokia isn't stupid. They know that people want a 5-inch display, and things about timing. With the 1520, they went to the extreme end, and now they're kind of going back and filling in. And I think the 930, which if you still look at the Lumia 920, I still look at that as sort of the preeminent Windows Phone 8 device. It was a huge seller. It was available worldwide. It came out fast. Everyone had it.
It still works to this day.
Yeah, and it represents sort of like people just have like reverence for it, and I think. And that's an important thing. I think the 930 is going to continue that. I think it's just going to be updated with, I think similar hardware to whatever the icon is going to be, but it'll have that more traditional Lumia design. And so I think that's what's going to be that device. And it's going to be a device it's going to be a high-end device for everyone, basically. And I think that's what the 930 will be, which is what people, of course, want. The big issue for us in AT&T is we'll have a Qi wireless charging.
Yeah, well, that's good. You want Qi wireless charging, don't you?
Oh, I do want it, but AT&T blocks everything.
Well, here's my question with the next one, because I've been holding out. I wanted to get a 1020, but I got to the stage where I was like, I'm holding out. Windows Phone 8.1, will we see another 41 megapixel camera phone, do we think?
Not for a while.
Yeah, not for a while.
That's a niche device. It'll come out. A phone like the 1020 will come out maybe once a year.
Right, exactly.
It's just kind of like once they've had enough time to gather enough technological improvements in imaging, they'll compile it all into one device, one hero imaging device, and that'll come out once a year. You're not going to see the successor anytime soon, I think. Maybe end of the year C at the earliest.
All right.
And of course, the other thing we should talk about is that most of these new phones that we're expecting to come along don't have to have a camera button, and don't even have to have buttons on the front face, because of course 8.1 brings about this new concept where you'll be swiping up to see or potentially to see these buttons at the bottom. What do we feel about that? How do we feel about on-screen capacitive buttons?
I'm okay with them. I mean, hopefully it'll result in like a smaller bezel around the bottom and sides. We haven't seen them on Windows Phone yet, obviously, so it'll be interesting to see what OEMs like Nokia or Microsoft, I guess, then.
I've used Samsung. The Motorola X has them.
Do you like them?
Yeah. They're nice. What's cool about them is like they rotate around with the display, and they stay there. I think that's pretty interesting. Yes, I don't have any major issues with them not being there. I think it's sort of going away as an important thing. And now with 8.1, you can actually customize them by changing the color, and it gives you some more options. And that's actually kind of an interesting, trade-off. It gives you a little bit more control.
And of course, we believe the actions. I realized we didn't talk about Action Center earlier. That pops down. That has a couple of key commands like Wi-Fi, etc. in it as well, doesn't it? As well as notifications. Am I right in thinking that?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's the Action Center. Within the Action Center is a Notification Center.
Right. Okay. We'll find out more about that obviously in a couple of weeks' time when hopefully all the wraps get taken off of this. Speaking of leaks, I wanted to bring up on the interesting news today. Just remind people, don't leak things, children. Okay, it's bad. Okay. Ex-Microsoft employee today has been sent to the or has been arrested for leaking Windows 8 and Windows 7 to the press over the past few years.
Yeah.
How do we feel about this? This sort of possibly is the source of all the numerous leaks we've seen over the past couple of years of Windows builds as they've been coming through.
Well, yeah, I think this was the initial leak. I don't think these are subsequent ones we've seen with, like, say, 8.1, Update 1, and that kind of thing. I don't think it's been established. These companies take this stuff seriously, and when it wasn't just let's be a little clear on this too. It's not that 8.1 or Windows 8 was leaked in a sense, like screenshots and some info about it, sort of like how we leak stuff about Windows Phone 8.1. That's not what happened. No. It was actually like proprietary technology for their security aspects of the OS that were leaked.
Mm-hmm. That's part of it. He also took in full builds of the software as well. We're talking.
Yeah.
Installable builds.
Yeah.
And a key component he took was the Activation Server Software Development Kit, which is apparently a proprietary system that will prevent unauthorized copying of Microsoft software. So putting that out there into the world is not good for Microsoft.
Yeah, and that's really the crux here. I think that's why they got so heavy-handed. It wasn't just like, oh, here are the new features of Windows 8 and what it looks like, which they would have rolled their eyes at and been upset about, but that's different than what this guy did. So, and I think that's where it crossed into criminal, thing, but yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, it does. At the end of the day, you join these companies, you sign a contract. There are things that are considered confidential to the company that you are asked not to leak out. And any company, almost every company that you work for will have one of these sort of things in place. And you're bringing it upon yourself if you decide to go and leak things out to the press. It's so be it. So not to the press. So leak things out to torrent sites and wherever else this sort of stuff ended up. You can leak things to the press. We want to hear about it, but this is different. And a couple of people today have sort of said, "Oh, well, this guy is a martyr," or he made this great capability that we could pirate Windows software. Just no. I mean, you don't hold up somebody who's a thief. This guy's not Robin Hood. Like, he's not stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. He's just stealing from the company he works for, betraying his contract, and then giving stuff away for free. It's just not right.
Yeah, no one's entitled to free software, at least if a company's asking money for it.
Exactly right. I'm going to come back to. We're going to move on in a second. I just want to come back to one more news item today that a couple of people actually wanted us to talk about, which is the DirectX 12 story that Sam, you ran not more than an hour ago, I think.
Okay.
So Sam, do you want to talk us through a little bit about what's changed in DirectX 12, if you can? Go on.
Yeah, it's the DirectX is it's a collection of APIs that Microsoft has produced, and game developers and other people in multimedia applications use it to make great games.
Yeah, it's been around, of course, for about 20 years or so. Right. We're looking at pretty much the reason that PC gaming took off, because a lot of people couldn't initially write games for PC because you had to go down to sort of the metal, if you like, and know how to program for all sorts of different kinds of software. What this was an abstraction of of everything that you need to do with that hardware, and DirectX is a huge deal. And of course, is the reason that the Xbox was called the Xbox, because it was the DirectX box.
Right. And so there's many components to DirectX, and one of those is Direct 3D, which is the graphical part of the APIs.
Yeah.
And so today, that's the part that Microsoft focused on today. They haven't talked about any other parts of DirectX 12. They're going to save that for build in later days, they said. But the big thing with the Direct 3D is that it's supposed to they've redesigned it to make it faster and more efficient for developers, and the goal is to get console games, PC games, phone games, tablet games, all these games easier for developers to make and put on all these different devices, and improve the efficiency across all platforms.
Yeah, and you say all platforms. There was quite a from your article I read. There was quite an emphasis on mobile devices as well, which of course will be interesting. One of the bits that I found interesting about this one as well. Every time we've had a new DirectX version so far, you've needed a graphics card that had the capability to utilize it. You know, you could always be backwards compatible, but you have to have a new graphics card. It looks like we actually won't need that. So it means that they're obviously starting to get this new layer of abstraction, which means that they can start pushing out DirectX updates to things like mobile devices. So our phones, our tablets, things that are sort of running on the ARM system on a chip device, should start to see improved capability. We should start to see better games. It's just quite a techie news item.
And if you have a crazy gaming desktop PC, you're not going to have to go out and buy a new graphics card. Microsoft work with all these different manufacturers to make sure that DirectX 12 and all these new APIs will, for the most part, be backwards compatible with hardware that's already out there. I mean, there's going to probably be older hardware that might not support it, but they said more often than not, it'll be good to go from the start.
Which is good news for me because I don't want to upgrade my graphics card just yet.
I haven't upgraded a graphics card in 8 years probably. I don't know. I don't game on PC. That's all. It's that simple.
You don't game at all, man.
No. And the Intel stuff has been pretty good. It keeps getting better with each generation. Although my Dell XPS 15 has a NVIDIA GeForce 780 or something like that with 2 gigs of video memory dedicated, which helps. So I do prefer having another solution as opposed to built in with Intel. But I think for most productivity things, the Intel onboard video is actually good enough.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But we'll say we won't go into too much detail on that because we appreciate we are a Windows Phone podcast. But the key thing is that Windows Phone games might be in the future due to get much better.
They should be. One of the benefits for mobile they listed was with performance, the API overhead for specifically Snapdragon processors will be improved. And
good.
Last time I checked, every single Windows Phone device out there was on a Snapdragon processor of some kind.
Yes, yeah. So moving on, let's talk about apps this week. I thought we'd talk about Blink first of all because it's got a brand new look which is remarkably familiar for people that have had Lumia devices for a while, and is potentially the first look at this rapid fire mode that they were going to include in Windows Phone 8.1 by default. So Dan, you talked about Blink today. Do you want to talk us through the app?
Yeah, I mean, Blink's a good app that I never use, but it's a really cool app. I mean, so what it does is, it rapid fires, it takes a bunch of shots at lower resolution, which is really the crux here of like why people do or don't like it, because that lower resolution for stills is not nearly as good if you're shooting at like, say, on a 20 megapixel camera.
Of course.
And in that sense, Nokia's solution is a little bit better, but that's a trade-off for speed and rapid shots and processing. You can also make animated GIFs and stuff. I like the changes. I think the new look is really good, and the features that they added are really helpful, including the tutorial. It just feels like a more well-polished app. But it's maybe, I think, like one guy, including some people at Microsoft Research. But clearly, Microsoft is taking it and sort of giving it a little special treatment and probably going to integrate it into their own technology because they can, right? They kind of technically own it. So.
No, of course. Yeah. And I find it interesting looking at the new UI, just how much familiarity there is compared to sort of the Nokia Smart Cam and Nokia Pro Cam UI that's come about. So it's clear that even if the merge hasn't happened yet officially, we are starting to see Microsoft jump on board, agreeing with some of the changes that have been made. And of course, this isn't what the camera will look like in Windows Phone 8. We have seen Windows Phone 8.1. Sorry, we have seen roughly what that's going to look like, and it's very customizable. You can choose and change all the button options, can't you? Which I'm quite interested in. So yeah, that's Blink.
You're missing the most important part of Blink.
Oh, go on.
You can share it to Microsoft's social network.
Yeah.
Oh, blink.so.cl.
Yeah.
All the millions of users that place has.
Yeah, and to OneDrive, which is something. I still can't get over not saying SkyDrive anymore. I'm struggling with it every day. So yeah, the other one I want to talk about a bit this week, looking at the apps that we talked about, is breaking news. Dan, you covered this one as well this week. The breaking news app. You told us why we needed the breaking news app for Windows 8 and Windows Phone.
It is different from Bing News.
And then I proceeded to get into a lot of fights with people in comments who just were missing the point of it. I mean, first of all, I'm not saying that don't get me wrong. Bing News is a really good app. I mean, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, it's a really, really good app. I use it all the time. And just because it's a really good app doesn't mean there can't be other good apps out there that help make it better. Breaking news is different from Bing News, and it's not like use this instead of. But sometimes the fanboyism in our own audience really, I find, grating. Just like how some people think everything that Nokia does is amazing. Not entirely true. Okay, Hear Maps is like really good, but it's not as good as like say Navigon, which is more powerful. It's not saying that Hear Maps is not good. It's just saying that there are other things out there. So breaking news I use because it is a live stream of breaking news. It's so breaking that a lot of times there aren't even stories. Sometimes they're just tweets that are coming in of like stuff that's actually happening at that moment. And I got into kind of like a fight with someone in comments. There's like, oh, Bing News headlines is the same thing, and it's like it's not. Like if you open Bing headlines and you open this app, you'll see there's almost no overlap in content. And so this app is really good if you're a news junkie. You just really want to see what's happening. Now, I love it on Windows 8 because you can split the screen and shrink it into like a little margin, and you'll just see the stream of stuff popping in every couple minutes. It's actually like a news ticker, but with breaking news. And I just find that really interesting because you can see stuff that's happening around the world. And the stuff that's posted is done by editors who maintain and fact check stuff to make sure that the source it's coming from is reliable. It's not a lot of people are like, oh, it's owned by NBC, so it's biased, blah 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 blah. But it's owned by them, but they don't manage it. It's managed by a separate company. And all you have to do is just look at the stream of stuff, and you'll see that they pull it from all different sources, and there's no commentary. It's just the headlines. And I just find it really impressive. For me, this is what a news app and what technology should be used for. Having said that, I did complain that they haven't been, the Windows Phone app hasn't been updated in a year, and it's missing a lot of features that's on iOS and Android. So there's definitely room for improvement. But I just open it up. I don't know. They're free. Download them, install it, run the Windows 8 app on your Surface, and just like see all the stuff happening.
I didn't know these apps existed until Daniel wrote about them yesterday, and I installed them and love them. They're pretty great. If you want news fast, the second it happens, these apps are where it's at.
There you go. I'll give it a check out this week. In that case, it's such a good glowing review. Speaking of things that are free, Mix Radio got a big update today. Do either of you guys use Mix Radio? Because I use it on rare occasion, but I've not checked out the new because it got an overhaul today, didn't it? So some new design.
Yeah. So we got 2 new features, basically quick UI shortcuts where you can tap like a little home button at the top, or it has a little timer now that shows you the duration of the song, which looks very Zune-ish actually. But if you tap that, it'll take you to the player. So they're kind of they didn't use the menu system that a lot of people use on Windows Phone 8 devices or apps where you tap the ellipsis and you put like a home button there. What they did was they put them up into like little UI elements, which for discovery is a little bit difficult. It's not obvious, but once you do know they're there, it's actually very useful. I like Mix Radio a lot. I think it's improved greatly over the last year and a half. But something still. I'd be more interested to see how this merges with Xbox Music.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? It's because have they bought Mix Radio? I did check that.
Yeah, it's going to be part of the same company. Yeah.
So this is the thing. The application experience is pretty good. The mixers and the radio stations that they created are, let's be honest, pretty much better than any of the playlists that you really get on Xbox Music.
Right.
But overall, I prefer Xbox Music as a service. So as long as it gets integrated, not wiped out by, I think everyone's happy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way of putting it.
Having said that, what I use my own music, and I use Songza a lot.
Songza is the best. I love it.
Yeah, Songza is really amazing because I discovered so much new music I never heard of before on there, and it's hilarious some of the playlists that they have because they're so specific.
Right. And they're so good.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, all the playlists are like really, really decent. And so I find Songza a little bit more interesting than Mixed Radio, but I think Mixed Radio is like it's a really impressive service. And I also don't just listen to music a lot. I'm working always from home. I don't play music while I'm riding. It's too distracting. So
Songs, is it on Windows Phone yet? Or
yeah, Windows Phone and Windows 8, but I think it might be a US service only though.
It is. Yeah, that'll be what it is.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's fine.
It's like Spotify. Yeah, we have Spotify here still, but yeah, that'll do. So yeah, that was Knocking Mixed Radio. Big update this week. If you want to go and give that a try, it is ad-free and free, and generally we don't really know how it makes money, but there you go. We won't question those. Talking of things that, again, sticking with the free run, it appears this week, Facebook Messenger dropped in the time that we've been off the air. Guys, are we using Facebook Messenger? How are we feeling about it?
Yeah, it's actually pretty nice.
How do you feel about it eventually being stripped out of the messaging hub?
That's the thing with Windows Phone 8.1. You're going to see a lot of things that you've been used to for a long time on Windows Phone get removed from the core OS just because they're, services like Facebook and Twitter, and those services evolve faster than the OS gets updated.
And they're not being used by everybody, which is really upsetting.
Right. I mean, I loved the Facebook integration in Windows Phone.
Yeah.
But, as Facebook Messenger grew, they added things. Those things weren't in the Windows Phone integrated version of it, and so now we have Facebook Messenger, and it's great. So, the two big things would be attaching images and all the sticker support, and it's pretty cool. And it's actually been really reliable. Notifications, push notifications are fast. Live tiles fast. And sometimes with the, Facebook chat built into the messaging hub, I'd find a bit of a delay, but with the dedicated app, I haven't seen any complaints with it so far.
Yeah, no, the reviews for it have been really, really good, and I think you're right. I mean, people want their cake and eat it too, and that's like what they want, everything integrated into the OS. I mean, people say all the time, we do an article on Skype, when's Microsoft going to build Skype into the OS? And it's like, I don't know if people have been following for the last 2 years. Skype has had radical changes done to it, especially on the back end. So you can't bake in a moving target into the OS and still deliver a good experience. You're either going to do it and then miss out on features, or it's just going to be bad. And so you have to pull it out or do something else. And I agree, having everything built in gives you a more native and fluid experience. Everybody agrees with that.
What's the thing? So the bit that concerns me is that when Windows Phone 7 first came out, it was sold as the people-centric operating system. Yeah, so the idea was put people first was thrown out there. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily worked. I'm not saying it was perfect, because at the end of the day, it didn't sell necessarily the numbers that it was supposed to sell in. But I absolutely love the fact that my all my contacts are synced up nicely with Facebook. I get Facebook profile pictures as part of my contact book. I can't imagine going back to it, and it really weirds me out every time I see phones that don't do it. And it's just like, what? How do you know who's calling you? And I don't believe we're going to lose that. And this is the thing, we've got to make that quite clear. We shouldn't be losing that, because Microsoft has this back-end integration with Facebook that they have with sort of their connect Facebook to Hotmail. Exactly. And with that link, you won't lose. And the other thing is that gains the ability of being a little bit more agile, because they can make changes, directly on the service and then push that out to their own servers. And that way the interface between the phone and the servers doesn't really change. They can just change how it builds in the background. Boring technical stuff. The point of the matter is that what you still get, you should get the same experience, hopefully, for the most part, apart from a couple of little minor changes. But it won't quite be the same experience, and maybe setting up will look a little bit different now. I don't quite know how the setup experience is going to work, because in theory they'll have to send you off to a website to go and hook up with Microsoft account rather than doing it all natively on the phone. How people will adapt to that, I don't know.
Well, also don't forget, you're going to have the single login functionality in Windows Phone 8.1. Once you put your Microsoft account info in there, you won't have to re-enter it. And every time you launch an app, it'll just sort of hook up. In fact, Subway Surfers has the Facebook new API in it. And I don't know if many people have noticed that, so that it doesn't launch for when you're playing Subway Surfers and you want to link it up to Facebook. You hit the button. It used to launch it to a web browser, which then you had to log in and give permission. Now it actually launches the app and does it through the app. So you don't need to log in again, because it's already built. If you already have a Facebook app on your phone, you're already set. It just logs in, you hit OK. And so that kind of seamless functionality is going to be part of 8.1 for Microsoft account, as well as the Facebook app.
Do you like that? Do you like the Facebook app integration like that?
Huh?
were you kind of impressed with the Facebook apps authentication?
Yeah. I think it's a really great thing. Because Facebook now is becoming this authenticator, right? A lot of people are using it to sign into stuff. It's a pain in the ass to launch a web browser and have to log in and all this, like Twitter right now, So having it as an API is certainly a lot. It's much more preferable. And so once again, I think these are those small things in 8.1 that people will actually. It's not exciting to write the headline about, but it's going to be that thing that's just going to make the phone so much easier to use.
Right. So. Yeah, Cortana, Action Center, big headline things. Yeah, they're going to be great, but it's all the little things that, when added up together, are just going to make 8.1 phenomenal.
Yeah.
This is the sort of thing. This is where Microsoft having some control over the Facebook app is obviously beneficial, because it means they can build this kind of integration that we just talked about, and I'm sure the developer who wrote that will be very happy to hear that people are enjoying it. So yeah, Facebook Messenger, really happy to see it, because people were complaining that I didn't have stickers, I didn't have the latest this, that, and the other. As long as Facebook keep it up to date now, because this one is unlike the Facebook app on Windows. This is actually published by Facebook rather than letting Microsoft take over and take control. So we'll have to find out how people get along with it, but it seems to be pretty good so far. I'm certainly enjoying sending stickers of cats to my girlfriend. So there you go. The one game to talk about this week, I think, is probably Rayman Fiesta Run. Either of you guys playing Fiesta Run? So I loved Rayman Jungle Run. I played through the whole game, and I've sort of prevented myself from buying this yet, so I don't get addicted again. It's kind of an action to present myself. Have either of you guys played it?
Yeah, I played it.
I liked it a lot. What we thought? Is it better on Windows 8? Better on Windows Phone?
I think the Windows 8 version has a few more bugs than the Windows Phone version. At least that's what Paul noted in his review. I haven't played the Windows 8 version yet, but I have no complaints with the Windows Phone version. And it's a really fun game. And it's also based off Rayman Origins that just came out on, I think, the Xbox One a few weeks ago, and I've been playing that, and that's ridiculous amount of fun.
Yeah. So is it as good or is it better than Jungle Run?
Better.
Yeah, I think it's better. Yeah, they've improved a lot of stuff. But I mean, the first Rayman was really good too. So I mean, they're just both awesome games. They're the few games that bring a smile to my face when I play them. They're just so happy and just like. The music for Fiesta is just ridiculous every time it launches. It's just like, I don't know.
Is it like a happiness drug for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I just like them because they're simple games that, to me, recall like when I was a kid growing up with Nintendo, which is like a basic platformer. And it's just that quick fix. Yeah, so they're some of my favorite games. I really like them. But,
So we'll have to prescribe some of that to you every time you use these Google products that make you so angry. So right. Dan, go play Rayman. Just go and get some spirit back. So that's all my app highlights for this week. Did you guys have any apps you want to talk about this week that I missed off the script?
Not apps, but I do want to talk about this guy.
This guy, Surface 2?
With
LTE.
Something special.
LTE. Oh, of course, yes. I forget that only came out in the US. It's not really a thing here. Right. Go on. Tell me about it and why I want one.
Well, after this podcast, I'm going to post a I think I'll answer a lot of questions. Yeah, a long kind of like first impressions post basically, because I think a lot of people have questions about this, and so I'll just talk about it briefly for a moment or two.
Yeah, go for it.
But basically, I mean, a lot of people are wondering like, why get this over just a Surface 2 and use tethering, right? Because you could do that.
Like a Dell Venue 8, which is obviously smaller.
Yeah, and it's totally fine. And the only way I can phrase it is you want this device and you know it if you need it. I mean, there's going to be a small group of people out there who just need to be connected all the time and do work all the time, and they want this. It's also super convenient to have, but I think, yeah, most people will be okay with tethering because they're just going to open, how I used to do it. I would open up my Surface, sync up and just check my email and surf for a few minutes and do that kind of thing. If you do that for an hour, though, you're going to completely drain your phone's battery. It's going to get really hot, and it's just not a good experience. Okay, so what's the solution? You can plug in your phone to the USB on the Surface and then charge it. And now you got this stupid dangly, system. You got to move the phone and the Surface, and it's just like
you get a 3G dongle of some kind.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that too. But I mean, all of this stuff is just not as seamless.
Agreed.
And so you're paying for literally convenience, the ability to always just have something to fall back on, and
you're also paying, of course, for your new monthly contract for data.
Right,
or month to month.
Yeah, which on AT&T is like I think it's about $40 a month. It's actually 30 plus 10, and that gives you 4 gigs of data. Which, though, this is the interesting thing, you can then share up to with 10 devices.
So when you say share, do you mean as in that 4 gigs get shared across 10 devices? Or?
It means
you turn the Surface 2 into a hotspot.
Right.
Right. Okay. But just so going back, you pay $40 for 4 gig.
Yeah.
Good Lord, man. You guys need to get a handle on your AT&T situation over there, because that's way too expensive.
Well, that's actually not that expensive. Like
£15 unlimited.
Oh yeah, but do you have LTE?
Yep.
I don't think it's very good LTE. You guys are just starting to roll it out there. But you have that other network that's super expensive. Is that
still
3
good.
really expensive?
No, 3 of the really cheap ones. £15 unlimited 4G LTE. I get 45 megabits download. It's sweet. Yeah, you guys need to get talked. Like just talk to AT&T. Go and tell them.
It's not just AT&T. Verizon is not any cheaper at all. I mean,
well, go and talk to your monopoly companies then. just get your ducks in a row.
No, it's because you can't really compare the two. England, last I checked, is a tiny island.
Yeah, we are.
It's a adorable island whose infrastructure is like the size of Texas for us.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's not fair to ask AT&T and Verizon, who have to lay out all this fiber optic nationwide to some of these most remote parts and build this giant network. And the cost difference is different there. It's the same reason why South Korea is pretty awesome. South Korea has they have they've had ridiculous internet for years, but South Korea is tiny. It's really, really small. It's a lot easier to collect money and taxes and just build infrastructure in that than in the United States. We got a lot of land here, and that's pretty much the main reason. Now, I'm not going to completely defend Verizon, AT&T. Of course, they're skimming from the top here and probably pocketing more than what their fair share is. I mean, hello, look at text messaging, which is $20 a month here for unlimited texting. I mean,
sorry, what?
It's like that is highway robbery. So there are issues here, but I mean, in fairness with data, that is just the way it is.
Yeah. Hey, if your service is good, I suppose you can't complain. But so going back to the Surface LTE. So here's my question. I think it's the main thing. It's clearly, I think the LTE built into tablets is a great idea, but because of the fact that it's additional contract on top of the original one, it feels like it is still quite niche.
Right.
It's a great convenience if you're actually going to be going around the place. And really, how often do you not have access to Wi-Fi in this day and age? Relatively less than certainly we're better than we ever used to be. But you've still got a couple of instances. I'm trying to think of a good one now. I can't. Yeah. So, but how long have you had it for?
Just 2 days.
2 days. And have you found yourself using the LTE, or are you on Wi-Fi?
Well, I'm on Wi-Fi now, but yeah, when I'm much more likely to take it with me now when I go out, because and just throw it in my car and keep it with me. Because before it was like, oh, is there gonna be Wi-Fi? I don't know, probably not. It's not gonna be useful. But now I'm like, it feels different in the sense that I can use it all the time and have that sort of connectability. But it is definitely niche, and I don't think that's a bad thing. As I put in the article, in 2006 and 2007, I had my first smartphone, and then they came out with the Sprint. The PPC 6700 was the first EVDO pocket PC. I remember taking it around and showing people, and they were like, "That's stupid. Why do I want a computer on my phone?
Yeah.
Who checks email? Why don't you just wait till you get home? Messaging is dumb." And that's what everybody was telling me. And now look at 2014. Everybody has a smartphone, and it's just common. So there's always going to be this early adopter thing where people take a technology. It's too expensive for the majority of people, and they're like, I don't need that. And then prices come down, and it becomes more ubiquitous, and then everybody has it a couple years later, and everybody feels stupid without acknowledging how wrong they were. And that's
the world
according
to Dan Rubino.
Well, it's the same thing with tablets, though. I mean, so LTE on them right now it's niche. It can only be for people who really need it and can afford it.
If I'm being honest, I wish this had its own data connection pretty much every single day that I use it. And I take the 8-inch tablet format. I've always said is almost perfect for me, because you take it on a tray, you take it commuting, it's just perfect. I've always got this computer. I typed out the script for this on the screen keyboard on this. I just whatever I want to do, then I run a batch script later on because I can. And it's just every day I want that to have 4G LTE on it. I'd be lying if not. But I would still really struggle to justify another contract, even at awesome UK prices.
It's still niche. I carry my 2520 with me all the time. Has LTE, the AT&T's LTE, and most of the time if I'm in a coffee shop, I'll just use their network. But if it's too slow, if I want privacy, just hotspot. It's great.
You've got the option.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if it's just it's nice to have, but that's not enough reason for most people to buy it, and that's fine. It's not supposed to be. It's not being sold that way. I think it's a great option just to give it to people out there. I think it's also the reason why Microsoft didn't have like a big press release and like, big thing about this, because I know not many people are going to necessarily get this. But I think it's a great option.
I'm kind of disappointed that there's no Pro with it, by the way. I know the Pro is full Windows, so it's much easier to put dongles in there. But
right. Yeah. Well, I think they're testing the water. I think they want to see how this does, and if there's demand, they'll do it. But and there may be some other logistic issues too with battery life and everything.
Yeah,
but,
true.
I think they're just dipping their toe in and giving the option to people. But
so if you want it, go and buy one. So yeah, that's the Surface 2 LTE. Sorry. Let's bring on to conversation for this week.
You guys are getting it. You guys are getting it. Vodafone.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh, with Vodafone? Never mind. Yeah, they're one of the few that think they can charge American prices.
Fair enough.
So so moving on to conversation this week, I've got 3 points to sort of chat about, and I'm afraid that the first two you're going to touch on Android. So first of all, Nokia's Android offerings. Dan, you were there for the Mobile World Congress in Bailing. We talked about the X Pro, or the X HD. I lost track of how many X's there were being created. Is it X Plus? I don't want to talk too much about the phones because people have seen the phones.
Hold on a second. I'm going to charge in my Surface.
All right, go for it. So while Dan goes and does that, we're just going to talk quickly about the phones. They are Android phones, but they are a forked version of Android. This is Nokia taking essentially the Amazon approach to Android, ripping out all of Google's services, ripping out pretty much everything that Google have done, and just taking the Android open source build, and then throwing in Nokia services. So you've got Microsoft services. So you've got things like OneDrive, you've got Mix Radio, you've got Here Maps. Yeah. It's basically putting in Nokia Microsoft ecosystem into Android, which is an interesting experiment.
I mean, people are saying it's supposed to be like a gateway drug to Microsoft services, and I guess that makes sense. But I'm still having a hard time wondering why something like the Lumia 520, 525, 530 can't be that gateway drug.
Well, so I think we've all agreed that this is basically Nokia's plan B, as far as I can tell. I mean, they've positioned it with the right marketing speak, but it is the plan B.
There's always this issue with the fact that Windows Phone doesn't sell well. Like, I know Nokia does well within the Windows Phone ecosystem. It doesn't mean as a phone maker they were doing well. And had Microsoft not bought them, their bottom line financially was not good and was not sustainable. And now that's a key word right there. I can keep saying that Windows Phone is going to take off and grow huge, but I think we all agree now that there is not going to be any moment where this happens with Windows Phone.
No, the growth will hopefully be steady from this point on, and it has. I've seen an awful lot more Lumias than I ever used to, hanging around on trains and various other places. Girl sat next to me today had the yellow 1020. I'm looking along thinking, damn, I'm jealous of that. But like you say, it will grow into a steady third place, but it will never be the leader necessarily because it just wasn't quick enough to the party.
Yeah, there's also all sorts of issues, but so they needed something to sell that would also help fill in that end of phones. I mean, these are supposed to basically replace, eventually what's just their dumb phone line. Now the
feature phone. They prefer to be called feature phones.
Yeah. Whatever. But so it's going to replace that stuff. There's a couple of places where they can save money. One, they can recycle all the hardware that's found in Android hardware because Android hardware is already mass produced, both the chipsets and everything else. And with all the stuff stripped out of it, like camera buttons and on-screen buttons, they've been able to reduce the cost for this. Now, ironically, of course, Microsoft has basically announced that they're doing that for OEMs with these last changes. So with Windows 8.1, you're not going to need the on-screen buttons and even a physical camera button. I think had Nokia known that, they might have. I mean, all this decision-making was made 18 months ago.
Of course,
18 months ago, they didn't know Microsoft was going to be like, oh, here's some more chipsets, and we're going to get loosen the hardware restrictions.
I mean, we should clarify, they probably would have known fairly recently after that, thanks to the partnership in place. But
no, well, I mean, the partnership,
really,
no, because, well, Microsoft can't, even up to this point, Microsoft could not tell Nokia plans that were way in advance to give them. If they did, they had to tell everybody else. There's no favoritism with Nokia as a partner, and that didn't change even once the merger. Even once the merger started happening, that got even more distinct.
Chinese wall, as they call it.
Right, and so you have to keep that separate. So Nokia just didn't know about this stuff, or they couldn't act on it. Even after Microsoft and Nokia agreed to merge, or at least the hardware division, Microsoft couldn't go, hey, we're going to do all this cool stuff, so you can stop doing what you're doing now. That can't happen, and so that's why we're seeing a lot of this, and it's a shame.
So the thing I kind of want to talk about with this one is the message, okay? Because I don't know how it was reported over there in the US, but I got an awful lot of interesting people that I work with day in, day out know that I know my stuff about this sort of about Windows Phone, about Nokia, and they were all questioning, what's the point of this device? Why does this device exist? And there were an awful lot of lesser informed or lesser caring media outlets that were reporting it as Nokia is using this and in light of Windows Phone not doing so well. That was the story they were trying to find that story. They were prying out the story that didn't exist and potentially falsely reporting it. And some people will notice that. But what does this actually mean in terms of perception? Is this a gateway drug, or is this damaging to Microsoft? And how do we think it will continue to play after the acquisition?
I don't think it's damaging. Microsoft's a devices and services company now. If a device isn't a Microsoft device, Microsoft wants their services on that device.
So the old cloud first, mobile first, as Satya is saying. Yeah, it's a good point.
I mean, there's a few aspects here, which is the message is definitely difficult to sell. I think Nokia did a good job during the press conference to control that. Elop was a master on stage with preempting what people were going to write and say and worded things carefully. That's why we posted that kind of funny video where he mentions Microsoft like 30 times. The idea of using Android, and not just Android, I should say the forked version of Android, the non-Google version, and using that against Google is interesting, because if there's a threat to Android right now, it's not necessarily Windows Phone. It's the idea of OEMs forking Android and going on their own. No one has done this yet. Nokia is the first company to take Google and put Android in a phone and fork it. Granted, Amazon was a real trailblazer here, what they did with their Fire and Fire HD devices. And they showed you can do this. You can actually fork it, make your own store, and make a product that people will buy. That's such a dangerous precedent, though, because if more companies do that against Google and see it can be done, especially in the phone arena, it loosens their control, because they make all their money off of Google services, and if those services aren't being put on the forked devices, which you can't, because that's the deal, if you fork it, you don't get that Google stuff.
Yeah.
If more companies do that, it's a threat to them. And where are you seeing that happen? It's China right now. If you look at the amount of forked Android as a percentage, it's gone up significantly in the last year. That's got to worry Google. So is Microsoft and Nokia smart enough to be able to actually use their own operating system against them for that purpose? And then they're also loading it up to make it look like a Windows Phone, and also loading it up with Microsoft services. You can argue that's like a Hail Mary pass, but it's sort of an interesting, approach. I can also say that Nokia looks at this. They're not looking to recruit new Android developers to create apps for this. What they're looking to do is co-opting existing Android developers, bring them into the Nokia developer system. And the idea is like, hey, you make that app. Here's why you should put it on the Nokia X. And one of those benefits is in-app purchasing and carrier billing. Now, carrier billing for those in the U.S. and Western markets is not a big deal, but in emerging markets, it's absolutely crucial because a lot of people don't have credit cards, and so they rely on their carrier. who is the king of making these deals? It's actually Nokia. They have a lot of carrier billing contracts in place, and that's dollar signs for developers, because when they get that access, they can sell more of their apps. Once they're in that system and making an app, though, and put it onto the Nokia X, Nokia is basically like, hey, why don't you now make that for Windows Phone? Here are the tools and here's the assistance. And they're giving them like promotional materials and helping. They're really helping devs. And that's the idea, is just sort of feed devs into Windows Phone. Now we can argue whether that's going to work, if that's smart, or that's too aggressive. That's fine. But that is that's the rationale they're giving. It's nuanced, it's complicated. Those are all things that people don't like when they do, sound bites. So.
Yep. And that also kind of segues into the rumors of Microsoft potentially buying Xamarin. Have you heard about that, Jay?
Yeah, Xamarin, the platform which is basically used to try and make they try and turn C# apps, I believe, into iOS and
Android apps.
Android apps. So effectively, it's the theory that I could write an Android and iOS app in the stuff that I'm currently familiar with, so .NET languages, which is appealing, I must admit.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting move for Microsoft too. That kind of plays in with the Nokia X and having their services and being more comfortable with embracing Android and iOS, and that.
Yeah, certainly if they started supporting their own version of the iOS App Store or something somehow, or were able to do that somehow, because at the moment, biggest block to developing on iOS is you have to have a Mac, and apologies, but that's not for me. It's whereas Android, it's more the fact that the dev tools historically haven't been so good, whereas nowadays I understand Android, the Android Studio to be pretty good. So it's definitely interesting because, like you say, they could try and, I don't know, it's acquire and then it's the old Microsoft strategy of acquire and then slowly enhance and then kill or just take ownership of.
Right.
Yeah, the Orbis simulation.
There's the rumors, and Mary J. Foley, who spoke to this, and she's confident in it, that Microsoft is considering Android somehow with Windows 8.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the dual boot, because there's been a few. That was the next one on the list.
Well, that's different. That's a different.
Oh, okay. Okay, go on.
It's about somehow they're considering using Android in Windows 8, but no one knows what that actually means. If it's an emulator or no one knows. But
something like BlueStacks or.
Maybe. I mean, the details aren't there yet, but what's clear, and I think this is smart, I mean, if you're a new CEO and you're at Microsoft, everything's got to be on the table for consideration. And I think clearly they're just looking at everything going, let's look at that. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, but those are some of the rumors that are flying around, and they come from apparently very reliable people. So this whole Android thing could be real interesting. Microsoft may be trying to actually, grab the bull by the horns and really just take them on full front, and, but what that actually translates to, we don't know. Regarding the dual boot stuff, yeah, this is real interesting because I think Google's the one that's sort of blocking everything.
So let's talk about that. So how many companies now have come up and said they were going to dual boot? We had Huawei, we had Asus. I think that's mostly it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, and Carbon.
Yeah, the Carbon. So, I don't believe Carbon. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, I'll believe this when I see a device. When someone goes, here's a phone and it dual boots and it goes on sale Monday, okay, I'll believe it. But some of these companies just say stuff and then like months later, like remember that device that was announced last year? I think it was last year at Mobile World Congress. I think it was, or was it CES? It was a Windows
8 phone. The concept. Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, remember that was gonna come to market. Where is that today? So I don't believe a lot of these companies. I believe when Apple says something, or when Google says something, or Microsoft announces something. When some of these third-rate manufacturers, I'm sorry, that's what they are. They say something, it's some guy here says it, and then like another PR person contradicts it. That's a mess. That's a PR nightmare. And
I know, it's like you say, it's not only PR, just trying to adjust the stock market a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, that too. I think they're just trying to gain attention. So I'll believe Carbon when they actually make it.
So do we believe the again, and this is all speculation, this is all rumor, we should clarify this, the talk that Google is not so keen on dual booting with Windows?
I believe that. I totally believe it. Because
I also believe that Microsoft don't want to do it either.
Probably not, but I don't think Microsoft was like, I don't think they gave them an ultimatum. I know Google has, so here's the deal with Google. The whole forked Android thing, right? It's real interesting. You can't make, if you're, say, LG, and you have a Google Android phone, but you also want to do a forked version and do your own thing, you can't do both. The OHA, if you're a part of it, you're part of it. If you decide to fork Android, you're basically kicked out of the OHA, and you can't go. You can't go back in. This is why I forgot which company it was. It was a couple months ago. Said they were going to announce their own forked Android version, and Google said if you do that, you're out. And they said, "Oh, okay," and they backed off. And they were like days away from a press announcement. It was a big story.
I missed that.
It might have been Acer. I think it was Acer.
Okay.
And so that's the sort of heavy-handed tactics Google uses. They don't want their stuff associated with Microsoft or to be. They don't want Android to be perceived as a crutch for another operating system, and so they want to keep their own identity. So I have a pretty good feeling that that's what they did.
It's strange, this one, because I'm going back to the days when I used to dual boot operating systems, back on PCs, which was realistically an exercise in frustration and just boredom more than anything else. Yeah. I don't actually see it being useful for any reason. No. Oh, sorry, not on a phone anyway. I think you need your phone to be a phone. I can maybe see it on a tablet because maybe you want to go to Android or somewhere where there's a bit more apps. But
I don't see the appeal to consumers.
Yeah, this is stupid. I'm sorry. The dual boot phone thing is one of those things that geeks immediately are like, oh my god, that's amazing, yes, give it to me. And in reality, it's the dumbest thing ever. No one wants to do that. No one actually wants to boot up their phone into a different OS.
What's the thing? If it's actually dual boot, we don't want it. If it could in some way be fast swap with some kind of layer of virtualization, maybe I'd be interested in that.
Sure, but that's not going to happen.
I mean, it's not impossible. It's not impossible. With the right virtualization technology, you could do it. There must be so many hurdles to get past, though, because. Right. But we've done this sort of thing in sort of server level, enterprise level, in just virtualizing Windows desktop and server issues. Hell, that's part of what I do in my day job. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't see how you'd want to. I mean, I get virtualization, I get the BlueStacks idea, I get trying to bring the apps across, but you make a choice.
No, what it is these are companies who don't have much to sell, in the sense of like they're not Nokia. They can't invent new hardware, which requires capital, requires talent on your team, and I don't mean just talent, like those people are untalented. I mean that Nokia can actually attract high-end people who can make things happen. Motorola is like this too, or was like that, I should say. Samsung. These lower companies don't have that capital. They don't have that advantage, so they got to do other things, which usually means gimmicks, and that's what this is. It's a gimmick. It's a way to get them their name in the press. They get highlighted. People talk about it. It doesn't really matter if it actually sells well. It's just the idea of getting it out there. So I think dual boot phones just sound good. I think it's a stupid idea in reality. I don't think people are going to buy them. And I think, because think of it, you got to have two stores, then you got to manage two accounts, and you got to buy something on one, not the other. And what's really the advantage here? Android has a few more apps?
I can't see it unless the only way I can see it is if it's an extension of dual SIM and you have one operating system for work and one operating system for home. That's the only way I can see it being useful. Kind of like what BlackBerry tried to do with their work and home separation. Sam, can you see anything else better than that, Sam?
Nothing. I'm just picturing turning my phone off and booting it back up to go into Android or Windows Phone, and I'm just hating myself thinking about it. Yeah.
Think of all the phone calls you'll miss during the boot process.
Right.
It's too much choice. It's too much choice for people. They don't want all that stuff, So
okay.
Do it, but.
So last topic I have then, the Windows 8.1 Spring Update is available for Microsoft servers today if you're willing to force it in some sort of way. It's due to come out. Is it basically around build time? It comes out to the people.
Patch Tuesday in April.
Patch Tuesday in April. So there we go. Mm-hmm. My question is, because I think Dan, you have it installed. Should people spend time going and trying to grab it themselves? Is it worth it?
If you have to ask, the answer is probably no.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. Yeah, if you're like, no, I think most people can wait. It's just like a week or two. Like, shoot, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're a geek and you have some time, it's easy to do. It's just running executable files, like 5 or 6 of them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do in a certain order, and then your computer reboots. It takes a while. It's a big update. But I do like it a lot. I think they keep. What I like about Microsoft these days is that they're quick to react to things. And acknowledge sort of when something isn't working the way they anticipated. And so some of these changes in the update 1 are basically better for mouse users. So I'm actually on a computer right now with it's a laptop with a non-touch monitor because my XPS 27 broke.
Oh no!
Yeah. So that's getting fixed. But I'm using 8.1 now on a non-touch screen device for the most part, and it's just interesting how they gave me back a lot of stuff I used to use, like right-clicking on a tile now brings up a little menu instead of that bar at the bottom, and it's more traditional. They have to put the power button at top and everything, and it's
bringing back sort of the desktop interfaces that have already come about and people are just used to, just trying to bring them into the new Metro language.
But there's also cool little things, like now it tells you at the bottom, instead of just the apps and the arrow pointing down, it actually tells you how many new apps you've installed. So
that's cool.
It says like 6 new apps. And things are just a lot smarter, and it's just easier to use. So it's a great update. I'm really excited about it. I think Paul Thurrott has been a little too negative on it, saying that they're starting to, basically saying Microsoft had a vision for Windows 8, and stuck with it for a while, but now they're sort of trying to please everybody.
Designed by committee.
And in doing that, they're making this like monstrosity of an OS. I see the reasoning, and I don't completely disagree with it, but I'm so far happy with the changes they've made, and I'd be curious to see how other people sort of react.
It is interesting. I like the fact that they're going to put the things on the taskbar on the bottom, because that is useful for that is useful for people who are using a keyboard and mouse. I can see that as an item, and I can see what they want to do with eventually windowing those for those who want to use it as well, so that you have this sort of weird hybrid mode. I can see that working. I just think, in some ways, I think what he's getting at, and it does make some sense, is should they be trying to improve the where should the attention be? Should it be on bringing Metro to the desktop, or should it be on bringing sort of the desktop aspects up into touch world, which you could argue is what Windows 8.1 was all about. It was bringing the control panel, everything else, into touch.
Yeah, they can always. Well, you're going to say, Sam? Sorry.
The focus should be everything. They shouldn't neglect desktop users. They shouldn't neglect tablet users.
Sam, you can't focus on everything. That's the word. The word is focus. You've got to pick something to work on, buddy.
The problem is Microsoft is a company that does have millions and millions of customers across tons of different devices, and they've chosen an OS that should work on all of them, and now they're just trying to refine that experience for each device you have, and that's nothing wrong with that.
The thing is, they can back off from this stuff in the future. They can still face. They can fade out the desktop, then bring it back, and then fade it back out again. Because I think what happened here is I think Windows 8 was almost too futuristic for people, and it was too radical of a change, and now they're bringing it back. It doesn't mean that it can't go back there again, and once the market adapts and people adjust to it. But I think they're doing a pretty good job with trying to fix stuff that maybe went too far. So they can always go back. I don't see this as I don't know. That's how I would say.
Cool, there you go. So we're going to switch on to the community section now. We're going to come to a couple of questions from last time. I was going to go through questions on the last time, but I'm going to pick out a couple because it was a little while ago, thanks to various issues. Some people picking out the fact that we've been a bit irregular with our updates. Yep, we will. We know. Hopefully, we'll figure this out. Whatever happened to your plans of this is from Clifford Daman. Oh God, I'm going to struggle with this. Sorry, Daman Niji. That'll do. Whatever happened to your plan of having game nights on the weekends? I added you all on Xbox Live yesterday, so nobody responded to my friend requests except for Abhishek. Maybe it's time to withdraw them. It's been over a month now. Clifford, just to quickly verify, when you add somebody as a friend on Xbox Live, you're following them, that we don't necessarily have to add you back. You can still game with us. It just means that you are sort of engaging with that person. And this is a concept of followership now. You don't have to be two-way friends. That said, we've had a few since Titanfalls came out, but we're not organised a game night. We'll probably figure that out because maybe do something over a weekend, maybe next weekend or something if we can find some time.
It'd be fun.
Just have some game nights or something, but can't be this weekend because I'm busy. But we will definitely we will try and see if we can get like I would say a Titanfall game night, but the problem is that if we do it, then we'll get a few of us on board and quickly we'll fill up the party immediately and people won't be able to play together. So we'll figure out how that might look.
Yeah, we could always stream it on Twitch, talk to people in the comments, things like that.
That could work. We could basically just find out who's the best gamer out of us lot, which, we already all know is me, so it's probably not worth even trying. But yeah, so chat room, if you've got any comments or questions you want to send in, now is the time. I'm also going to just go to a couple from the announcement post today, because we had a couple of interesting points. Someone asked us to talk about DirectX 12. That was JAS 00555. Hopefully we did that and you were happy with that. Somebody has said that about Windows Phone 8.1, this is from KHYZ, which I'm going to pronounce as Keys. Well, about Windows Phone 8.1, with all the messaging apps, I'm still wondering how Skype's going to improve. Still not able to send pics on chat. The keyboard still can't change to be horizontal, and it's still slow as ... Besides that, seems mostly complete. Do we think that there's going to be improvements to Skype announced at Build, considering how good they've been with the Xbox One app?
I think the Skype teams the past few months has been focusing on, upholding their back-end service so everything syncs perfectly now, and going forward we'll see more updates to the individual apps like we just saw on the Xbox One last week. Windows 8 version of Skype got an update 2 weeks ago. I think now's the time that we'll start seeing more features added now that they've got the core functionality starting to improve.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good way of putting it, actually. I hadn't thought about the fact that, of course, they'd have people working on back-end more. Another one I want to pick up from our comments this week was from Neon Spark, which says, please talk about Mozilla abandoning the WinRT platform and how will Microsoft pitch WinRT at Build, given it took the BLC guys basically a year to work around the limitations of WinRT, and Mozilla just gave up. To quickly point out on the VLC guys, they had different issues. They effectively had a whole bunch of codecs that were built to work on the x86 instruction set, not on the ARM construction set, and they couldn't bring that into the WinRT world. They also had a whole mess of other issues with their software development, basically around the fact they weren't really managing it as a project, they were managing it as a grassroots bit of fun, which is why it took them about 18 months to get anything out to market. So there you go, and that's a different situation. Mozilla have looked at it and obviously decided that WinRT is not getting them the downloads that they wanted. It's not worth supporting what they wanted, and it is an interesting point because we're constantly talking about WinRT ARM ones versus Atoms.
The problem with what Mozilla did with Firefox was there was no marketing. It was in beta for less than a month.
I didn't even download it.
Yeah,
I barely. It was what was it available for, like a month? Like
a month.
Screw them. I mean, I understand. There's a fair point to be made that browser limitation on Windows 8 RT is too severe, and that's,
agreed.
And that needs to be fixed or something. I do not have an issue with that, and I agree 100%. And I think that Mozilla was sort of working in a system here that was unfairly, against them from the beginning. But having said that, it was still stupid. Like, I mean, even I didn't download the damn thing, and from what I heard from people, it wasn't very good anyway. So it's.
Well, the other issue is, I think, is that they didn't actually release it for WinRT. They released a client that you basically installed as a x86 thing, and then if you had, you could choose to launch it like Google Chrome did. You could choose to launch it in full screen RT style. So that's great if you've got one of these and you've got, effectively what you're looking at is an x86 tablet. But people who really wanted it, which is people on WinRT, they didn't actually get to download it or use it. They didn't really test that market.
And I mean, if they built Firefox Touch for these machines that are most likely laptops, the Surface Pros, desktops.
Yeah,
you're just going to use the desktop version of Firefox.
Exactly.
The people that would actually benefit from a touch version of Firefox couldn't get it.
Yeah,
and it was
less than no one knew about it. We should say.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. But I mean, we're looking at this now. How many WinRT devices have we basically got? We've got the Surface 2, the Surface Original RT, the Nokia Lumia 2520. I think Lenovo had an ARM machine.
There was an Asus one too, I think.
Yeah.
AT&T, there was a small.
Samsung had one that they threw out, but realistically, those are there aren't that many. If we're being truthful, it is mostly the Surface and the Nokia.
Samsung never had one. They had.
No, they did. They had the what are they calling it? Tablet.
They had an Atom processor.
Was that an Atom?
Yes.
Okay, take it back. I genuinely thought that was an ARM. But it's just the thing. It hasn't caught on as well, and it does beg the question: are developers still interested in developing for WinRT only? And it's easy to develop for WinRT if you're developing for Windows 8 anyway for most things that are, sort of broad generic apps and easy apps that are just the classic stuff you'd see. When it gets to, stuff that requires much deeper access to the computer, people are going to fall back on the technologies that have already been built and already have grown over years and years and years. If you think about how far back this Windows stuff goes, I mean, some of this stuff is going back as far as like Windows 95 and some bit before then. We've got 20 years of technology that Windows 8 can still run. WinRT is brand new, fresh out the gate.
And the issue also is Microsoft has a lot of restrictions because specifically around browsers, because browsers are the #1 hole in the system for security. And so they want to really have sort of tight control over that and just having allowed access. It's the same thing with the Kinect system, especially 2.0 with the Xbox One, where it's not open to developers. Because, there's a camera in my living room with a high-quality microphone. Do we really want to open that up to any developer to make an app and release it in an open store? Could you imagine the blowback? So there's also this issue with browsers, and like I said, though, perhaps they're being too heavy-handed and they can find a middle road here. I hope they do, because I do think, I don't use IE11, not because I think the rendering engine is fantastic. I just need extensions. That's all, and they don't give me extensions. I don't use it. It's that simple. So
I just need to make a quick correction point. Stephen McAteer Jr. in the chat room has just pointed out that WinRT and Windows are two different things. Correct. I was abbreviating for my own usage. Windows RT, of course, is the version of Windows that is only for ARM and runs the WinRT system only. WinRT is a set of programming instructions similar to the x86. I'm not going to go into the details, but yes, technically they are different things, and I will just clarify that. Moving on, going on to the comments from this week. So from our chat room now. Thank you, chat room, for those of you who sent in the questions. Rodri's got an interesting point, and he says he works in IT, and while all these updates are good things for users who are used to mouse and keyboards, there are still a number of users who are still running Windows 8. We have never been into the store, and therefore they've never got 8.1. It's too little, too late, because they're not getting these updates. He's right, actually. He's really right about that, because in VLC, when they released, said they had to release on Windows 8 because people hadn't been upgrading. Let's go back to this. It was released to the store. At what point did Microsoft actually either do pop up a notification saying, "Hey, look, update, this is a really big deal," or deliver it through Microsoft Update?
Cool.
Soon.
That's a tough question.
I haven't been following exactly. I've always forced the update, so I don't know. But I need solid numbers to actually. There has to be numbers out there showing who's on 8.1 and who's on 8. And if I had those numbers, I'd feel more confident either agreeing or disagreeing with that statement.
That's fair. I'm going to put it out there saying that might be quite a good article to try and see if we can dig into.
I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. I think a lot of people did upgrade to 8.1, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, this is the thing. So a lot of people have either got tablets or the kind of stuff where they'd go into the store. But for some people that I think got desktop PCs, they all have just left it and not realised it was over there. Certainly, I had to prompt my father to go and update it because he wasn't looking. It's a fair point, and I think it's something that possibly does need to be explored just to find out. Because at some point, Microsoft need to scream at people, "Hey, look, update," because it's a big deal. What else have we got? Cruise Zero has said, I don't know if it's very relevant Windows Phone, but maybe with Windows OS as a whole. I'm obsessing with the automobile industry and it feels like they're taking sides of mobile technology. Some are committed to working with Apple with the recent Google partnership with OA. Where does Microsoft stand? I feel there's another area which will determine which device people choose. Same with wearable tech. He's basically making a point of
wearables.
So yeah, he's talking about wearables, but he was originally talking about the auto industry. So the original part of the comment was, with this new Apple tech that is the Apple in-car stuff, does it persuade people to buy iPhones, and should there be something equivalent from Microsoft? Because Microsoft's partnership, of course, was with Ford at one point.
Well, the Ford thing is not. That's a rumor that hasn't been confirmed yet, although it's probably true. Does the Apple thing make people want to buy more iPhones? They already buy the iPhone. It's not the issue. The reason it's going into a car is because people buy a lot of iPhones, not the other way around. Now, having said that, Microsoft is once again was the first in the industry, or at least the first one to have like a major footprint and they're getting their asses kicked. They had their auto version of Windows. It was Windows CE. And that was big, and they had a lot of deals with companies, and now they're being pushed out. Yeah. And I think it's a problem. It's the same thing with Spot. Microsoft was one of the first companies to have major connected wearable technology, and it didn't go anywhere, and they canceled it, and now they're playing catch up. And Google just announced their Android Wear initiative this week. Once again, Microsoft was in an industry first, and now we're playing catch up. And same with mobile. This is an ongoing problem with Microsoft, where they almost jump in too early. Same with the touchscreens. Touchscreens on computers is another example of stuff that is really cool. I happen to love it, but a lot of people, it just hasn't caught on yet. But I guarantee you, in like 5-10 years, everything will have a touchscreen. Maybe sometimes they go in too early, and that's an issue. And I don't know what they're going to do about the auto stuff, but there's a reason why QNX is huge in autos, and why Windows CE isn't, and it's a problem that Microsoft needs to solve. So, and that's the iOS stuff. The real threat is this. It's sort of like the dual boot. They're going to make cars where you choose what you want, Android or iOS connectivity, and they're going to configure it for that. That's the real threat. So.
That's true. That's fair. We spoke about wearables. Interesting one here from Chris Harwick, who says, will the upgrades in Bluetooth for Windows Phone 8.1 help make it possible for smartwatches like Pebble to work as it does in Android and iOS? Dan, you have a Pebble. Are these upgrades? The way I understand it is that the Bluetooth LE upgrades that are there will go some way towards helping Pebble work, but it will need to be able to manage and deal with sort of hook into notifications, which I believe are possible with Windows Phone 8.1 SDK, but I don't know for sure.
It's a complicated question. All I can tell you, there's a Pebble app in the works.
That'll do.
The 8.1 update will give you more Bluetooth options. It still won't go deep enough for a lot of developers to make third-party watch apps. It's not going to be as open as Android, but there's access there. I can also say that Microsoft and Nokia are very aware of wearables and how important they are, although I would still say they're a little bit behind the curve. I think Nokia will have more interesting stuff to announce on wearables this fall.
Wearables is an interesting situation as well, because we say behind the curve. No one's actually really got the market sorted yet. Pebble, I think, is the first guys really to sort of make it. I mean, I like the look. The Pebble Steel, I would buy that thing. It's a great looking device. But the Pebbles, the wearables technology situation, it's a market waiting for a breakthrough device. That's all it is. It's just, it's sat here bubbling around. Everyone's like, this will be next, this will be next, this will be next. And it's not happened just yet, because we've not figured out what's next.
Android Wear looks promising.
Yeah, Android Wear is more dangerous to all these Kickstarter smartwatch companies. Those were sprouting up everywhere, but this is now Google organizing it and getting involved. It still needs that hit device, but I guarantee you things just became a lot harder if you were an independent company looking at making a smartwatch. Pebble will be a real interesting company. I think they're a company that will survive for the next few years.
Yeah,
but I think they're going to be constantly under threat. I think they're going to be like Palm, and they're going to be like BlackBerry, where they're going to make products that people really like. They're going to do well, and they're going to have brand recognition, but ultimately they may be squashed out.
They might have to resort to making their own line of Android Wear watches.
Yeah.
I know that could happen. They're a young company. They've got that option if they really want to. But as I say, they were first there. Their brand name might carry some kind of kudos now. It might be worth it for them. So.
Well, like Palm, but where's Palm today?
Palm made the wrong decisions, I think a lot of people would say in a lot of places. And I'm not saying I would have made them the right decisions at the right time, I'm definitely not saying that, but I think everybody with hindsight can say that their wrong decisions were made. So I think that just about brings us up to the end of the questions. I'm going to cancel off there because we're running fairly long now. So thanks for joining us once again. You can find us all on Twitter at Windows Phone Central. You can find Dan at Daniel_Rubino. George, our reviews editor, is at Coppertop004. Rich, our UK editor, is at Rich Edmonds. Myself, I am at JAYT Bennett. At Sega Corners, where you'll find Paul, our games guru, and at Big D_D5 is Dave, our forums dude.
Actually, Dave is retired.
Dave is retired?
Yes.
When did that happen?
Only a couple of days ago.
Oh no, Dave, we're sorry to see you go. So, but you'll be removed from that thing. Don't take it personally.
Shout out to Dave. He did a lot for our site. Yeah,
he really did, and he was very, very helpful. So, Dave, we're sorry to see you go. Sam, what's your tag?
SAMSABRI.
There you go.
Instagram, wherever.
So look at Instagram, everywhere but Xbox Live, where you're something else, which confused the hell out of me initially. You've also got @Marcham93 is where you'll find, crap, I've forgotten his name, Michael, thank you. @Mark is where you'll find Mark, and then the one that I always struggle with, Abby, sorry, is BAXIAB. Look at the bottom of the. I'm not going to try. Just look at the bottom of this post. You'll find Abby's. Abby, you need to get yourself a better Twitter handle because I can't pronounce that. Biaxi Bishek. There you go. That's my best option. This has been a Mobile Nations podcast. Go to mobilenations.com for more great shows covering everything mobile, or head over to our forums if you'd like to get involved with our community discussing more about the Windows Phone store, Windows Phone news, and Windows Phone devices and apps. That's about it. I'll let it over to Dan to say goodbye to everybody, as he always does.
Bye, everybody. Hopefully we'll be back soon. Now that I moved,
there you go.
Things may be better.
Things may be better. We don't want to make too many promises, but we are trying. Sam, say goodbye.
Bye, guys.
It's goodbye from me as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and thank you, chat room, for coming and getting involved.